Welcome everybody to today's webinar, Human Proofing Your Capital Program Processes and Workflows for Success, specifically specialized in the healthcare vertical. I'll be your host today. My name is Evan Hill. I'll introduce myself briefly. I'm a product marketing manager here on the team, and one of my favorite roles is to host these conversations that we have with different members of the owner lifecycle, the project lifecycle. It's always a really fun sort of conversation that we have with different folks every couple months. A couple of quick housekeeping items before we even dive in. Number one, apologies for the couple-minute delay. We were working through some technical difficulties. Occasionally those pop up, not a huge deal, but we're still going to try and respect the hour time limit that we set for this. Second of all, it's meant to be very conversational in format and approach. I personally do not enjoy looking at a presentation or a PowerPoint screen for an hour and just looking at blank text. I do not find value or educational value in that. So the format is meant to be very conversational in approach. One thing we've learned just as an organization here at eBuilder and Trimble as a whole is that prospects and customers don't enjoy hearing from people who work for the company, and we fully support that sort of idea and concept. We want to hear from owners. We want to hear from people who are actually utilizing the software to benefit their organizations. So today's event is really to support those desires and those hopes from prospects and customers to hear from their colleagues. We have three amazing guests today that we were lucky enough to lock down for you today. I'm going to introduce them shortly. The way this is going to work is we're going to go for about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how the conversation goes. And then at the end, we'll have a Q&A session. So for everybody who is attending today's webinar, if you see on the right side of your screen, you should see a questions functionality, a questions tab. We have somebody who is actively monitoring the questions tab, and we will try to get through as many of your questions as possible. I will throw them randomly. I will throw random curveballs at our guests today. So Linda, William, and Elsie, I might throw you on the spot a little bit later towards the end of the show, but do not forget to ask questions. We typically get a lot, so we try to take those on a first come, first serve basis. My voice and my throat hurts a little bit today, so I'm going to try to do as little talking as possible. People are probably already sick and tired of hearing me talk. So with that said, let me introduce our guests. I'll cover all three of you individually, and then I'll hand it off to each of you to tell a little bit more about yourselves just before we jump into the conversation. We've got Linda Whitmore, who is the Director of Project Development at the University of Maryland Medical Center. We've got William Hucks, who is the Chief Operating Officer at Adams. We've got Elsie Lowe, who is the Senior Director of Facilities and Design at Montefiore Medical Center. Linda, I will start with you. First of all, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. I know you're super busy. We appreciate it and are grateful for your time. Why don't you tell the audience, all the listeners here, we've got a lot, which we're super excited about. Tell the audience a little bit more about yourself, your career, and how you got to where you are.
Sure. Good afternoon. I'm Linda Whitmore. I am the Director of Project Development at the University of Maryland Medical Center. We are the flagship hospital for a system of hospitals, a system of 13 hospitals across the state of Maryland. The medical center is in downtown Baltimore. It is an academic medical center. We are affiliated with the University of Maryland School of Medicine. We have the main hospital, which is the downtown campus, a midtown campus, which is about a mile away, and we manage all the planning, design, and construction for both campuses. Combined, we have about 1,000 beds, almost 50% of which are ICU, which is a little unusual. We're also the home of the Maryland Shock Trauma Center. I am an architect by training. Spent all of my career doing healthcare architecture, first for large firms, then small firms, and I was in private practice for a while. While I was in private practice, the medical center here became my largest client. And while they were going through a leadership transition, I was first asked to take a role here on an interim basis so that the new leadership could choose their own staff, which I was delighted to do. And then after about a year, was convinced to come inside to work on the owner's side, which I thoroughly enjoy. It's not for everyone, but I love it.
Perfect. Thank you again. Elsie Lowe is our next individual that I'm going to introduce. Again, she is the Senior Director of Facilities and Design at Montefiore Medical Center. I hope I pronounced that name correctly. Elsie, again, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for your time today. Why don't you give the audience a little bit more background on you and your career?
Sure. Thank you very much for having me. I always I will talk to anybody that will listen about process improvement in construction and design project management. As you said, you didn't take on the challenge of pronouncing my entire name, Suwon Elsie Lowe. Just kind of roll off the tongue, but it's okay. And that's always a stumbling thing, and I give people a hard time when they can't pronounce my name, and it puts them on edge, and they get all nervous about it. It's great, so much fun. Anyway, I like Linda, I'm trained as an architect. I went to architecture school, and quite early on in my career, I happened to have fallen into a career working for a hospital directly as owner's rep. I spent the last 26, 27 years or so working as owner's rep for hospitals. I spent a brief period of 3 years working for the New York State Dormitory Authority, once again, also building hospital. So I consider myself a hospital builder, which sees the project from beginning to end, from design all the way, concept design all the way to turnover and occupancy. In between all of that, there's I think a lot of your audience today is owners rep involved from the owner side. So they understand that there's many facets of what we have to do, and there's a lot of pieces that has to be pulled together. I started out, I kind of worked my way up the ranks over the years, and I felt the pain of what it means to manage project, the day-to-day insanity that you need to deal with, and the various component of the project in order to deliver it successfully. So I was just telling someone, one of my project managers, about how I was the worst brat. I was the worst complainer when they started talking about system improvement and process change, and using it to do project management, all the data entry, and the update of the budget and schedule and notes and stuff like that. I was the worst complainer. But sitting where I am right now, I see the necessity, but I still remember the pain of having to. So as I'm sitting in the seat that I am right now, I am sensitive to that, and there needs to be a balance to be struck between having the necessary evil of working in a system and computerizing it, making it more automated, and the real work that we have to do in the field.
Thank you for that intro, Elsie. I'll just say I really appreciate you bringing on a human-sized bear in the background too to today's webinar. I didn't expect a fourth guest today, but what'd you say?
It's my friend. He's been keeping me company for the last couple months. I have to find someone in childcare and donate that to them.
I love it. Well, hey, the final guest we have today, unfortunately, you cannot see him over video because we are having, like I said, technical difficulties, but that is okay. We still have this wonderful voice. William Hux is the Chief Operating Officer at Adams. William, again, thank you for your time today. Super appreciate your commitment. I know you're a busy guy, but why don't you give us a little bit more background on you and your career?
Thanks, Evan. Yeah, happy to be here. So just real briefly, I've been with Adams for 20 years, so I've been doing healthcare owner's rep or program management for the last 20 years or so. Prior to that, I was in healthcare construction management, so I was on the construction side of things. So that's just a little bit about me. About our company, Adams, we've been around for 35 years, and our niche and our core competency is delivering healthcare capital projects for our clients. So we work for a lot of not-for-profit, academic medical center, faith-based hospitals and health systems across the country. Our company is a small company, 45 or so folks, and we're currently working in about 15 states across the country. So excited to be here. And we've been, I guess we've been using eBuilder for probably, I would say 8 to 10 year time frame internally at Adams.
That's awesome. Well, hey, folks, I appreciate each of you introducing yourselves. A couple of quick final notes before we jump into this discussion. Number one, if you have to leave halfway through or something like that, no big deal whatsoever. We're recording this. It will be accessible on demand, and it will be emailed to you. The second item, I completely forgot. So I'm just going to stick with the one housekeeping item, but let's jump right into our topic list. We have a ton of requested questions and topics that people submitted for us to discuss today. Elsie, I'm actually going to start with you because you mentioned that you were one of the largest complainers of a project management, effective project management, data management sort of system. Digitizing processes in healthcare is and I guess just improving processes and workflows to a more digitized, efficient system is unique, because I feel like the efficiency of dollar allocation, especially when it comes to budget in healthcare, has such a real impact on people. Like I feel healthcare is sort of unique in that sort of industry or vertical, I guess you could say. It's different than like I feel like the commercial world or something like that, because every dollar saved that you get from a project management system means you could potentially allocate that dollar to a new cancer research center, a new something, fill in the blank that really materially affects people's lives. So that's a very long-winded intro to the question, but Elsie, why don't you give me a sort of background or context to what your world looked like pre-project management system? What was that difficulty? What were those pains? What did life look like managing that day-to-day project data pre-eBuilder?
So I gotta be honest, I haven't my stay here in Montefiore is the first time I'm using eBuilder. I've used other project management systems, right? And I've also been in hospitals where they have nothing. So what do they do when they have nothing? They end up using Excel and emails, and it's just the data is just all over the place. Where I was complaining a lot was one of the more robust system that particular institution believe in investing in this project management system, and they were trying to implement it, refine it, and so on and so forth. And some of the refinement really is too onerous, and it's too tedious for data entry. There was a lot of questions in the introduction there. You were talking about financial accountability, which is quite important, especially when you work for an institution like Montefiore. Montefiore is it's located in the Bronx in New York. We serve a very underserved community of folks, and for those of you who are on the hospital side, as an owner side, the business is always depending on insurance reimbursement, right? When you in an affluent neighborhood, most likely they have private insurance. Private insurance in general will provide better reimbursement than public insurance like Medicaid, Medicare. So the revenue base is a lot higher if you are in the affluent neighborhood, so that they get private insurance and stuff like that. So Montefiore's revenue base compared to other people is substantially higher with the public reimbursement. So being financially accountable for capital development is quite important. And our capital budget is limited in a lot of sense because of that. So being able, that's what I try to explain in order to engage my associate, my PMs. I try to explain to them a lot of whys, right? Why do you need to, enter and manage your budget and make sure that you ask for the right amount of money? And when the project's over, why is it important to finish up all your financials and return whatever money is remaining? Because, like you said, whatever money is remaining will most likely go into a different program. Because if you don't create your budget properly, right, you create a budget that's too high. You end up reserving funding that potentially could be used elsewhere. Or worse yet, if the budget is developed in such a way where it's way out of the water, the project might never get done. And the required services that's going to be provided by that project will not be there. So being able to create a proper budget with accountability, with proper review steps, which is managed by something like eBuilder, and having to be able to vet that out, it's quite important. The other part that is great that these kind of systems will do is the overall portfolio view, right? So at the end of the day, if you accumulated enough data across all different kind of projects that you have working on within that period of time, you can leverage that data and find out what the average cost is. That gives you the ability to forecast cash flow, that give you the ability to forecast project costs, that give you the ability to plan out what project you're going to do and how much of capital expense needs to be for that particular year. So, it's day to day, it's very important, but that overall view to be able to see your portfolio of projects, what's, what does the cost mean? How much is it going to take and how long it's going to take and so on and so forth. It's a very powerful part of a financial project management system like eBuilder.
Linda, I'll jump over to you. Tell me a little bit more about what your experience was like pre a project management system like eBuilder or another. What, like Elsie mentioned, what did that day-to-day look like, but also what enhancements or abilities did you gain being able to look at a project's performance from a sort of bird's eye view?
So my experience was a little different than Elsie's. When I joined the medical center a little over 15 years ago now, we had no project management system in place. Quite frankly, we were buried in paper and lots of it. We were managing budgets on spreadsheets and tracking, tracking shop drawings and change orders in paper again, and very labor intensive and time wasting to have to chase that paper around. I also then had, because things couldn't be well shared, I had project managers doing things like tracking down invoices and trying to get invoices paid rather than an assistant who should be taking care of that kind of work. As a leader from the group, though, one of the biggest challenges is every time what should be a simple request came across from my leadership team, a simple question like, how much have we spent on the cancer center over the last 5 years? Couldn't tell them. We'd have to recreate all of that information from scratch. So the reporting features of having all of your information in a comprehensive database is immensely helpful. Being able to really, at any time, run multiple reports that will give you a glimpse of the entire program from many perspectives.
Perfect. That's a great add. William, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think just kind of the theme from what the other two have said and what I would add to it is, in construction projects, there's too much financial risk and too much complexity to operate, on your financial side with an Excel spreadsheet. It's just too much fragility in that spreadsheet. It's a setup for individuals to inadvertently make mistakes and too many things that can go wrong. And so that's one of the nice things we like about a system like eBuilder is it just eliminates opportunities for failure, both unintentionally by an individual and just the software, the systems letting people down and organizations down. And then just also, like Linda was saying, just the ability to customize the reports and give leadership, whether it's leadership of our company or our clients, consistent reporting and data is very valuable to them. And a lot of other benefits, but those are really, in my mind, that's the risk you're eliminating and the process improvement you're gaining by such a system.
Well, thank you, folks, for your thoughts on sort of what I felt like was needing to establish a baseline experience of what life looked like before a project management system was implemented. Now, I want to move on to the implementation experience. And frankly, this is something where it's totally okay to be vulnerable and admit that, there were mistakes made along the way, whether it was around getting internal adoption and buy-in, whatever it may be. But Elsie, I'll start with you again, and we'll go around robin again. But what was your implementation experience like? What was it like to go from no system at all, just Excel and a ton of paper to, a real construction project management system like eBuilder? What were your pet peeves? What struggles did you have? What return on investment did you get?
So at different places, it's different, right? But across the board, there's always that initial conversation that you need to have with senior leadership about this investment, because it's not just you don't purchase the software anymore, you do subscriptions. The recurrent subscription costs. Also, there's a human part of it, right? You have human resources to put in to train people and so on and so forth. But the most difficult part is the integration with the existing financial system. Like all the hospitals that I've worked in, there's a financial system that's already there, that's managing, not only capital, they're managing the day-to-day operation, purchases, and so on and so forth. So capital is only a piece of what they need to manage. So that integration is always a challenge to try to break in. In one scenario, most scenario, you're trying to introduce this project management software that design and construction use because of other component of it besides the financial part that's important. And by the way, we should probably talk about that later. The integration of other parts of project management software that besides the financial piece. Anyway, that integration to the hospitals, what they call the ultimate truth, financial truth for the budget, that integration could be difficult, especially if you come in and they already exist for years and years and they have all this stuff programmed and you try to bring in. If you're lucky enough, if they're switching financial software at the same time, you should absolutely try to break in at the ground up so that the integration for your project management system is at the same time. And they have
Sorry to cut you off. Linda, what was your experience like going from no system to a professional project management system?
In some ways similar to what Elsie described, although we chose not to integrate with our financial system from the start. We wanted to work within our own project management system and better learn it, better understand it, and have that in place before we chose to make the link to the financial system. So rather than a formal link, we developed a way that we got a once daily download of information from our financial system that we could then compare to.
Well,
and
I'm just going to jump in real quick. That's interesting to me because we hear, just to be blunt and frank, like the opposite from a lot of customers. It's like, hey, we need a direct integration with our financial system, and we're not able to move forward in implementation unless it's directly connected as we're setting up the system.
Right.
Can you tell me a little bit more? And I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is
fine.
really curious. I'm actually like genuinely really curious about this. What was the, I guess, sort of rationale for why you guys chose to take that approach, and what do you feel like you gained from it?
I think what we gained, let me answer your first question first. We came to that decision because we knew it would have slowed us down. We knew it was going to take a lot longer and be difficult to get the sort of buy-in of finance. Finance was very protective of their system. They didn't want something new, something from the outside, something that quite honestly wasn't hosted on our servers to be integrated with their system. So there was a lot of reluctance, and we didn't want to wait. We didn't want that to slow us down. But truly, we haven't found it to be a detriment. But it's interesting, the way you worded your question, I think, is indicative, though, of some other issues that we had, in that when we started out, the very early planning, sitting around a conference table, trying to work through things, what in retrospect were simple things, like permissions, who has access to what. We spent hours and hours figuring out who should have access to what layers of folders and who should have access to different things. And then we stepped back and realized we're coming from a system where everything was on a shared server. Everybody had access to everything. Why are we so caught up on, does, you know, Elsie have access to folder 1 and Linda have access to folder 3? We were stressing over things that were not important. I think one of the phrases I used yesterday when in a different conference was, and I just recently heard that, is something to the effect of perfection was the enemy of progress. And we found that to be true. We were trying so hard when we were defining new processes to figure out every possible eventuality that we never got to the end, because there was always one more possibility that we hadn't thought of. There's one gentleman on my staff, wonderful, very smart guy, but developed a process for making new capital requests. It has like 300 steps, because he couldn't let it go until every possible eventuality was covered. And in hindsight, what I would say to myself 5 years ago, and to anyone else considering that, is don't do it. Just try it. Try it. The only way you're going to know if something works is to try it, and you can always change it. But it will never be perfect. There will always be something that works outside of the system, but that's true now. That's always true.
I love that quote. Perfection is the enemy.
It was fascinating how much time we spent trying to figure out who should have access to what folders.
Yeah.
Coming from a system where everything was on the same server and we could all see everything.
Yeah. William, how about yourself?
Yeah, you're making it easy for me, Evan, because I get the benefit of, these guys are giving all the good answers. I just get to comment
don't say
on,
that too early. I'm going to throw you some curveballs later. So you just got yourself.
So I'm kind of coming at it. Yeah, so I'm kind of coming at it from like our own experience years ago, and then probably maybe more useful of either assisting our clients, like along with, eBuild or whatever, in implementing it on their behalf, or watching, clients implement it and see their struggles and what went well and what didn't. So that's, kind of got a little different perspective just of what we've seen across the company. One thing I would say is you have to dedicate the resources to it. It's just not something that you just like, hey, we're going to, everybody stop using Excel on Friday and start using eBuilder on Monday. It takes some time. I mean, you got to commit to it, but you just got to allow the resources and the training. And then what I've seen is, once people make that decision, you got to start using it. It's a use it or lose it type skill set. People need to keep using it, or you're going to be in this constant retraining cycle.
So, William, I want to dive into that a little bit further. The topic of adoption, especially when it comes to new software, is an interesting one. Getting internal buy-in around, establishing a new process, a new system, a new way to effectively manage data can be really difficult. And it's a common, I guess you could say, concern or struggle with many different types of organizations. But what would you say are, if you feel comfortable sharing, some practical strategies that you guys executed on to achieve that internal buy-in?
So yeah, no, that's a good question. And I think just like most things, if you want people to adopt it, show it how it benefits them, right? I mean, it's not like, hey, this is just a corporate cram down. This is going to make your life easier and better and take some risk off of you as the individual managing the project. You got to make an investment and you got to learn how to use it, and it's going to pay dividends to you as the individual using it, and also to leadership, in the reports and all the information that they can get as well. So, I mean, that's, I think, fairly easy to do because it's just a lot of benefits. We've covered some of those to such a system as an e-builder. I would say that, like what Elsie said, that integration piece, so on behalf of the clients, that integration with Lawson or whatever that accounting system they use that's a tough nut to crack. And honestly, we've had some people that have really spent a lot of time in a staff augmentation role for some clients that have helped put that together. But that's a complicated piece of the puzzle. And I think Elsie kind of nailed that. As far as what I've seen on the client side, that's probably the biggest challenge that they run into. And I would just, another thing to Linda's comment about perfection, I think we as, project manager types, right? So we love all this kind of stuff. Man, we had these reports that we were running initially that had, 15 columns of data in it. And then, what we realized is that's not necessary. We're giving it to our clients. They don't even understand it. So then we kind of whittled it down to like, okay, yes, you can have 15 columns of data in a cost report, or, you can probably tell the story in maybe 8 columns of data, and the client will understand it better. And, and honestly, our people will probably understand it better too. So it's like there's a bunch of data, but the good thing, to like Linda's point of the perfection, is you start doing it, you start figuring out what works, and like, well, hey, we don't need all this data, so let's change the report, right, and run the report that gives us the data we need, and drop what doesn't work for us.
So
Well,
I have a comment
sorry,
on.
go ahead, Elsie.
Okay. So it's true. The finance folks are very protective of their data, and they are very suspicious if anybody want to try in there and add anything or submit anything electronically and so on. So they're extremely protective. So it's very difficult to convince them that this is necessary. This integration is a good thing. I've been campaigning for that as soon as I hit here in Montefiore to try to get that done. And it's not easy. So as a drawback, as not a drawback, as a compromise, right? We need to continue to move forward. And similar to Linda, we're implementing things that are standalone and with some data transfer done manually with a clerk that we're lucky to have in our office that transfer that data from one place to another. And then once it's entered in there, it makes its route for approval, and when the PO get issued, she has the job to check it on a regular basis. She get a summary report, she go and check the ones that's outstanding, and then transfer that information, the PO number, the check pay number, check day number, back into eBuilder so that we could get that up-to-date information. Certainly it's not as good as automatic transfer electronically overnight that it happens. But it's basically the compromise that we have to make currently until I finish this negotiation that I'm trying to do the integration. So,
William, I want to go back to you for a second. We've been spending a lot of our time talking about, updating our processes to a more digital version, maybe processes that even include, 300 steps like Linda, or 300 possible outcomes like Linda mentioned earlier. But another strong sort of, I guess I would almost call it underrated piece of functionality that comes with a project management system is document storage. And I know it's not like a super sexy feature, but it's underrated in my opinion. The integrity of being able to say, this is the most up-to-date document for anybody who's trying to access something. That's an underrated struggle, for people who are coming from no systems at all. William, why don't you talk a little bit about the value that, a central document storage system that's integrated with all the processes you've implemented, what type of value has that brought you?
Yeah, no, it's a good point. So as an advocate for our clients or on the owner side, so a couple of things about that. One is the owner has the project files and the project data, right? As opposed to traditional system where, the design and engineering team, they have their own, right, their own systems and their own document storage solutions, and the contractors, typically are using some type of system internal to their company, and they're storing all their information there as well. And, while contracts, of course, are written to allow the owner access to this information, right? And it's all turned over in theory at the end of the project. It's just no replacement for, like, hey, the owner has eBuilder and all the project file. Everybody is storing their documents on the owner's system. So it's just peace of mind for our clients, and we like that, and that they control that documentation, kind of no questions asked. And it's an easy thing to do. It's, like Linda said about the, worrying about the control or who's got access and all that. But it's, in a relative sense, it's an easy thing to set up your file structure and, and move that over and use it in eBuilder. That's kind of what I have seen about the documentation piece and some of the advantages, if you're on the owner side, that it brings with it. I'll maybe tread into another area you didn't ask about, but so that's, in my mind, that's an easy thing to use. And what I've seen with our clients and our projects is it's very, pain-free to implement. I will say, and I guess this would be something advice I would give to folks that are considering an eBuilder or similar, is, it's got a lot of bells and whistles, right? There's a lot of different features you can use. And, just like anything, right? Some are more useful than others. And so we've also seen it where people just insist on adopting, like, literally every feature. And I honestly, I would say that probably hasn't gone as well for people, because just some things work better than others, right? I mean, I'll just give you, for instance, like, as much as we would love for the cash flow feature to do everything we want it to do and stand on its head and give cash flows for us and our clients, every time we ask it to, we have not had the measure of success with that we're comfortable with to use on a day-to-day basis. And so, so we're not using that feature. So it just, as opposed to somebody trying to use everything and getting frustrated with it, my advice would be to use the things that are the easiest to implement and build on that, as you go. And I'd be interested if Linda or Elsie, what their experience was in their organizations about that.
Yeah, I agree. I think there is more functionality than you will need, especially when you're first starting. So, try to get the basics down and really understand that before you start developing more advanced processes. As far as the document storage, that really was extremely beneficial to us, because for two reasons. One is it was accessible from anywhere, having it web-based, which our internal servers were not at the time. So having it web-based was helpful. It continues to be helpful having it web-based because, as you can imagine, being in a hospital, the data that is on a hospital server is very highly protected by IT security. So because we have our eBuilder system hosted, it gives us much more flexibility in allowing people access to different things. In addition, we did quickly build some document folder structures that are now just a built template. So when I am asked for a date, for a budget, for some piece of update on a project, I don't have to go track the project manager down. I can just look it up. And I like to be able to know where things are and go and find them and pull them out. If I have a question, sure, you follow up with the project manager. But being able to find data and know where it is very helpful. Having to find a person to look things up for you is a waste of time.
Elsie,
Agreed.
anything you want to add on the document storage piece?
I mean, yes, I agree. There's a lot of feature in eBuilder that you don't necessarily want to all jump in and do. And it's true. I do agree with William and with Linda that you have to start from the basic and make sure that's robust before you go forward. But the good thing about the document storage is that a lot of processes could reference the document. So that's a useful tool to have. And being that it's web-based is another useful tool, right? Because we're lucky enough to have not only the project manager that's working on the project, we also have construction managers. We have construction supervisors that's in the field. They're like field reps that are, that execute the project once it goes through the construction. So a lot of these field people, the construction management people, they don't sit in front of the desk to be able to have access to the server, to the hospital server. So they all walk around with a tablet. They have an iPad, and they could log into eBuilder on the iPad, or they could use it from their phone, and they could have access to documents. So if they need to do a quick reference, if they don't have the paper drawing, they could go in there and do quick reference. The other thing they do on there is all the safety documentation, the PICRA, ICRA, the daily checklist, and all that stuff. They could do that right there. We actually created a form so that the daily checklist is being done on the iPad, and they do it right. They save it right on there. So I don't know if they have joint commission. I guess they do. In Baltimore, they have to, right? Joint commission come, and one of the first things they ask for as far as design construction documentation is concerned is these daily checklists. If they do it on a regular basis, easy enough on the internet, and it's saved automatically into eBuilder, it's easy for them to get. And if you have stuff RFI and things like that, it's easy for them to take a picture, attach that picture as part of that RFI in eBuilder, and be able to upload that, and that goes out automatically, and it's not an email that you have to find later on as to what the RFI is. That RFI eventually might potentially become a change order. Then that's your backup. So there's that link of the processes and of the documents that you're putting in there. And the other thing we use the document management for is for the other team member that's not design construction, like IT. IT needs the latest drawing so that they can start laying out cabling plan and stuff like that. We point them to the folder, and they go in and pull the latest drawing and then go from there. Telecom, same thing. A regulatory person go into our document management system in eBuilder to download applications, to download the pre-occupancy survey documents that we need, the certification letters and everything. So document storage might seem boring, but if used correctly and integrated with other processes, it's very useful. So.
That's great. I am keeping an eye on the clock since we are approaching the hour. We've got several questions that have come in, and I want to throw a couple curveballs at you guys if that's okay. I think we will go round robin with the first couple that we have, and then I'll ask each of you individually on a couple of more specific instance ones. William, you've helped probably hundreds of people implement eBuilder and other project management systems. What would you say are, or I guess what tips would you give for people considering making the jump to a project management system, or are considering changing their current construction management system provider?
I think the first tip, if you're not using a project management system and you routinely do construction projects, my tip would be implement one. Get one, pick one, and use it, because it's going to bring a discipline and consistency that you don't otherwise have. So that would be the main thing, is to use one. That's a good question about changing systems. And we've definitely had some clients that have changed systems along the way. Again, I think it just goes to the dedicating the resources to it, right? I mean, you just got to take it seriously and allow the people, the resources to make a good implementation once you go to, whatever system you choose, or even to make a change. That it's just not it's not flipping a switch type activity. It needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to be also just, at a leadership level in the organization. It needs to have a champion, right, that can kind of help drive it and make sure that the resources are available. To Elsie's point, if you're gonna integrate on the financial side, that's usually not like planning, design, and construction going over to the finance group and saying, "Hey, we're using eBuilder now. You guys need to start integrating with us." That's got to happen at a CEO, CFO type level decision.
Elsie or Linda, anything to add there?
I would.
You
Go ahead,
can-
Elsie.
Go ahead.
I would add just simply upstream of that is do your homework. There are a lot of good systems on the market. Check them all out, do your research, and talk to references. Because there are a lot of really good systems, but they're all a little different. And the only way you're really going to hear the truth of how they work is to talk to the references. We ended up choosing eBuilder because we found it to be the most owner-focused, owner-friendly system, but do your homework and definitely talk to references. We spend a lot of time talking to references.
Yeah, that's a great point, Linda. I mean, so I probably should have said that as well, because for our clients, for many clients, we've run RFP processes for this type of system. And I think that's useful because the clients always learn something from looking at options. And, it's not just one size fits all type solution. That's a great point, Linda.
Elsie?
So I have to say that I was never in the position where I had to pick between systems. And what William said and what Linda said, certainly it's sound advice to talk to references and to take a look at all the system that's out there. There is a lot of, as much as some of the software company will say, oh, it's out of the box, you can use it right away. It doesn't happen. A lot of customization that needs to happen. So certainly be prepared to invest. But let me tell you, it's far better. It's not going to be easy. It's going to be painful to do the implementation, especially when you have, it depends on your demographic of your staff. Some are, used to pen and paper. They just, they fax. They don't, it's like, stuff like that. So it's going to be painful, but it's absolutely worth it. The alternative of not having a system, it's not, it's horrible. You're going to see that it's tremendous improvement once you get to the other side. Once you get over the.
Yeah, I just want to jump on something you said at the end there. It kind of segues into our next question. I think we have time for 1 to 2 more maybe. But how would you say your organizations have measured effectiveness or improving efficiency from implementing one of these systems like eBuilder? Is there any examples you can give? And Linda, maybe I'll start with you, if you don't mind.
That's an interesting question and a difficult one to answer. We measure our entire team's productivity in terms of percentage of cost of the capital program. So we look at what the cost of our work is, internal resources, external resources that we need. I can tell you, over time, it continues to go down. I can tell you that over the last 5 years since we have implemented eBuilder, again, it has continued to go down. But I'd like to think that's for a lot of reasons. I can't honestly say we have measured specific productivity changes that specifically to having the software.
William, how about you? I feel like I'm getting a sense that you might have an answer there.
Well, probably not the answer you're looking for. I mean, I agree with Linda. It's not that. I mean, as much as we'd love to say, I'd love to sit here and go, yeah, we experienced a 13.5% productivity increase. It's not that easy to measure. In part because part of what it's hard to measure is so instead of people spending their time on tasks that are inefficient and not really the highest and best use of their skill sets, what I would kind of put out to you is they spend less time doing that and they spend more time doing the productive things on their projects and addressing and avoiding issues. So it's hard to measure, you know what I mean? Like, that's a very difficult thing to measure. Like, how many problems did you avoid because you're not spending an inordinate amount of time doing something that you really don't need to spend your time doing? So I wish I had something that's cut and dried as that, but I think it's you allow your people to spend their time where they need to be spending it and where they can have the most positive impact in delivering these projects with certainty, for sure. So that's my best. Sorry, that's my best answer.
No, that's a great answer. Elsie, I'm going to give you the final word since you were the first to show up today.
Always like the final.
You can have the right answer, Evan. She's got it.
So look, I think the advantage is not measured by productivity. It doesn't make you do fast. This is not automation. This is not a factory going into robotic automation. This is not. I think the advantage of having a system is accountability, is being able to find things. I mean, to hunt down invoices. How much have we paid? What's the PO number? And how much have we paid on this PO? And why are we paying this? It's that having everything in one place, and that's the efficiency that you get. Not so much you could do more, but having the ability, having the clarity of where you are with the budget, having that communication clarity as well, and who approved what, and that's the advantage of having a system. It's not so much you could do more. It's not a factory upgrade.
Well, there you have it, folks. Human-proofing your capital program processes and workflows for success. That is today's webinar. Those are your guests: Linda Whitmore, Director of Project Development at the University of Maryland Medical Center; William Hucks, Chief Operating Officer at Adams; and Elsie Lowe, the Senior Director of Facilities and Design at Montefiore Medical Center. Folks, seriously, super grateful for all three of you. Unfortunately, we cannot see William's beautiful face today, but William, thank you for your voice and perspective today. Final note, just before we sign off, you will receive an email with this webinar accessible on demand in your email inbox, so be on the lookout for that. If you want to request a certificate of completion for this webinar, you can also reach out to one of our team members and you will also receive that. But with that said, thank you folks for tuning in. We really appreciate your time. We know everyone is busy, and we hope this conversational format delivered value for you and your organization. Thanks everyone, stay healthy, and we'll see you guys next time.